All right, back for another non-alcoholic beer review, and today I'll be reviewing yet another beer from Guinness, and they are out of St. James Gate in Dublin, Ireland, and this is their Guinness Draught 0.0. So, this is a non-alcoholic Nitro Irish Dry Stout, and they also call it a malt beverage with natural flavors. It comes in at less than 0.5% alcohol by volume, 28 IBUs, and at the time of review, this can is just over 4 months old. So when I first started doing non-alcoholic beer reviews on the channel, there were two beers that I'd say a handful of people recommended to me, Heineken 0.0 and Guinness 0.0. Now, I did the Heineken comparison, and that non-alcoholic beer is very comparable to regular Heineken. I did a side-by-side. Now, there's slight differences, and you can kind of tell it's a non-alcoholic beer, but it's kind of true to the original to some extent. Now, a lot of folks have told me the same about this non-alcoholic Guinness Draught. A fellow beer tubing friend, Adam, over at Mercy Beers, has mentioned this numerous times to me. He's like, I think you're going to be blown away at how close this resembles regular Guinness Draught. So I am here to do a comparison at the end of the review. So I do have another can of Guinness. I actually bought a 4-pack when I reviewed this for St. Patrick's Day a couple weeks ago. When you see this review is when that happened. And yeah, at the end, I'm going to do a comparison. But first, I want to review this on its own merits and then see how close it is to the regular. Now, I'm going to do the pour just like you do the typical Guinness, where you know, you do the 45-degree angle, 3/4 of it, and then pour the rest after it settles a little bit. We're going to do that because I did that for the Guinness Draught. I typically like pouring my nitro beers real hard, like the left hand where you just dump them in. Is there any really right or wrong way? I don't know. I guess it depends on whoever. I don't know. I mean, I feel like this 45-degree pour is fine for Guinness, so we'll do something like this. And then again, when it gets down to the last 3/4 or so. All right, so what I'm going to do is there's about 3/4 left. I'll let this kind of let you guys see the cascade a little bit here. You know, it's in the hashtag proper glassware. Okay, so it's kind of settling, and we're going to pour the rest in. But I mean, there's, again, how much is that going to change the feel and taste of this beer? Maybe a little bit, maybe none, maybe it doesn't matter, maybe it does. It has the widget, even the non-alcoholic version. So we'll put this over here. Now, as far as looking like Guinness, yeah. The one thing I noticed right off the rip, this is a little bit lighter than Guinness. Now, it's probably not going to come off on camera, but this has more of like a root beer, Dr. Pepper, cola kind of vibe to it. It has that like ruby red, deep ruby red color. On camera, it should probably look pitch black. It has almost a 2-finger of that super creamy, you know, nitro head that you want. It's pretty much a tan color that looks like Guinness, albeit maybe a bit lighter in person. You probably won't be able to tell the difference. Let's get a nose. Okay, so right away, I can tell you right now that this does not smell exactly like Guinness. And we'll see momentarily when I do the comparison, but this has this, and with a lot of non-alcoholic beers, I get this. It has this like, just strange kind of weird sweetness to it in the nose, like perceived sweetness. It smells like really malt driven without like that roasty coffee chocolate. There's a little bit of roasted malt in here. There's a little bit of like coffee and chocolate, but it's not straight Guinness to me. There's maybe a little bit more of like a caramel kind of toffee vibe, which I typically get in Murphy's Irish Stout. When I did the comparison of Guinness and Murphy's on St. Patrick's Day, I reviewed Murphy's and then in comparison to Guinness. That's what I noticed about Murphy's. A little bit sweeter, not as bitter as Guinness, and then a little bit more caramel and toffee. That's at least what I get out of it personally. This honestly smells more like if Murphy's had a non-alcoholic version. Maybe they do, I don't know. I've never seen it. But yeah, I mean, it has that you know, malt character. What I'm not getting in this, what I typically get in Guinness is a little bit of that earthiness. You know, it's going to have a little bit more bitterness, like a mild to moderate bitterness. And I'm not really picking up on that. So I'll say, based on the nose alone, if somebody told me this was a non-alcoholic version of Murphy's, I'd be like, yeah. For Guinness, not in the nose. Maybe the taste is different. Anyway, cheers, everybody. Let's see what this one has to offer. I'll hold off on anything I'm going to say. First thing I will say, body, very similar to Guinness, maybe a slight touch thinner. A lot in the comment section of the Guinness review, a lot of folks said it was thin and watery. And I never perceived Guinness to be thin and watery. It's it's 4.2%, I believe, right? Guinness 4.2. I'm sure it says somewhere on here. Yeah, but I think it's 4.2%, right? So for a 4.2% beer, like compared to like a Bud Light or something that's around 4%, yeah, it's going to be thinner. I don't necessarily think it's watery, but it's definitely thin. This a little bit watery, but you know, it also has less than 0.5% alcohol. The mouthfeel is phenomenal, just like Guinness. Smooth, soft, creamy. It's what Nitro does. The taste, it has nuances and subtleties of Guinness at the forefront. I get chocolate, I get coffee, I get a little bit of roasted malt, but it's a bit sweeter than Guinness. That's the first thing I'm noticing about this. It's a bit sweeter throughout the palate. As it passes through on the back of the palate, I get this, and again, this could be my own palate. We all have different palates. You've heard me say it many times if you watch the channel, but I'm getting this slight like dark grape kind of fruitiness that I don't get in Guinness. That hits me about 2/3 of the way through the palate. And this finishes a bit sweeter. There isn't, to me, a substantial bitterness. Not that Guinness has substantial bitterness, but there's nothing to kind of stop the malt sweetness, kind of rein it in a bit. And with Guinness, you get that mild to moderate bitterness. It's an Irish dry stout, should have a pretty, at least a semi-dry finish. This doesn't really have it. There is a semi-dry finish, but it doesn't have that slight bitterness. Here's the thing, in a pinch, if I was craving Guinness and I wanted Guinness without the alcohol, this would definitely work for me. It would. It's not as good as the original Guinness. So Adam, you told me you'd be surprised. Now here's the thing, I haven't done the side-by-side, I'm about to, but I will say right off the rip, based on what I remember 2 weeks ago having a Guinness, this does not replicate Guinness to a T. It's about maybe 60, 70% there. I just think this, if you told me this was Murphy's, again, Murphy's non-alcoholic version, I would believe you more so than a Guinness, just because this has similarities to Murphy's more so than Guinness for me personally. Now, I'm going to do, it's also less than 0.5%. You can't even tell there's any alcohol because there's pretty much none in here. But as far as like rating wise on this, I think I gave Guinness a 3.8. I'm going to rate this, I'm going to give this a solid rating because again, I think it would do an okay job if you wanted a Guinness draft without the alcohol, but I think Heineken 0.0 did a better job replicating Heineken than this, but it had the same issue that it has with Guinness. While Heineken's not substantially bitter, it does have a decent bitterness. We'll say mild to moderate, just like Guinness. And on the back, the finish of that beer, that was the one thing that was noticeable with the 0.0 Heineken was that it didn't have that hot bite. We'll just call it a hot bite. This same thing doesn't have a little bit of that earthy kind of bitterness that I'm accustomed to with Guinness. So I think that's where the differences is. Anyway, Guinness 0.0, it says 0 on my can. Some cans say 0.0, some cans say 0. I think they call it actually Guinness 0 or 0 non-alcoholic draft. I have no issues giving this beer right here, or non-alcoholic beer, I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5 for what it is. I think they did a pretty solid job with it. And, you know, in a pinch, I would buy this again. Now, I did buy a 4-pack of this, so I do have this on hand when I want a non-alcoholic beer. And price point availability, this was $8.99, just like the regular version, which, you know, obviously for the same price, I'd rather have the regular, but if you have to buy non-alcoholic beer, that's not a bad price point. It might be cheaper, more expensive in your neck of the woods. And availability, I'm sure wherever Guinness is sold, you probably see this one. I bought both of these at the same grocery store, and they were both the same price and pretty much right next to one another. So it is what it is. Anyway, let's pour out the regular Guinness and let's do a proper comparison, because that's what I'm here for, and hopefully that's what you're here for as well. Oh, Guinness, there you go. It explodes out. So we'll do the same pour that I did with the regular version. So we get, okay, something like that. Maybe I left a little bit more in here this time. Now, one thing you will notice is this has a much better cascading effect than now look at the beauty of that cascading effect with the Guinness. That, my friends, definitely plays the role. Now, you know, I take back what I say about the color, because maybe these look very similar and you will see that momentarily. Now, we'll just pour the rest in, whatever. Like these pours, it doesn't matter. I like doing the hard pours anyway. All right, so we'll put this over here for now. And we will let this cascade up. In the, you know what, I'm just gonna, because you saw the Guinness review I did, you just saw the cascade, you don't have to see the cascade. Let me cleanse my palate. All right, so this looks like Guinness, right? For sure. Let's do this the right way. Now, as far as like how they look in the glass, I'm going to do something like this. Yeah, they actually look identical. So I take back what I say about the actual look. They look identical. This one's still cascading, but it's the same color, same everything. Let me do the nose here, and then we'll go to the Guinness. So yeah, again, it's sweeter chocolate, and like there's a little bit of coffee and roasted malt, caramel toffee. But it has this just weird kind of sweetness that I get. Let's see. This one is finally done cascading. Let's see. Yeah, so right away, this is more roasty. This is more of that dark chocolate, that cocoa powder, roasted coffee, not caramel and toffee, and not an astringent sweetness. Now, as far as the cans, this just over 4 months old, and this is, I think, a month older or so, maybe 5 weeks, so not too far off in terms of freshness. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely noticeable. Yeah, sweeter, maltier, more of a malty sweetness in here and less in here. And this just has like raw kind of, like a rarer kind of like more authentic smelling chocolate coffee roasted malt. This, not as much. Anyway, let me taste this one more time. Well, let's do the Guinness and I'll go back to that. So cheers, everyone. Yep. So again, there is this earthy bitterness right in the smack dab middle of mild to moderate on the back of the palate. It's like in the throat. You can tell it's bitter. It's not overly bitter, but it's bitter. One more sip. Yeah, definitely. There is so again, what I kind of said when I was doing the regular review, this has more of that cocoa powder, dark chocolate, roasted malt, coffee kind of vibe to the malt character. As it passes through, the bitterness starts to seep in. It's more of an earthy kind of bitterness, mild to moderate, and this is a little bit more dry. This is like semi to full-on dry, where that's just like semi-dry. Yeah. Now let me go back to this. I took them both out of the fridge at the same time. Should be no issue with like temperature or anything. All right, let's go back to this. Yeah, so maybe they're not as far off as I thought, because going back to this, the sweetness isn't as over the top as maybe I said it was when I was doing it, the regular review, but there is this noticeable, like slightly like dark grape kind of sweetness on the finish. The biggest difference between these two, I can say without question, is this is a bit more bitter and dry, and the malt character isn't in that caramel toffee range. It's more in that chocolate coffee roasted malt range, where this doesn't have really any bitterness to back it up and has a little bit more of that caramel toffee and a little less of the chocolate roasted malt and coffee. So is this good though? Like, this is, again, very similar to Heineken, where it's like, look, if I drank Guinness all the time, if it was my go-to beer like some folks do with Heineken, and I know a lot of folks do with Guinness, in a pinch, this would work if I couldn't consume alcohol, for sure. No issues. Easily would drink this one and not think twice about it. But I don't think it replicates Guinness to a T. I think it's about 75% there. There's a little bit, leaves me a little bit wanting more. Yeah, it's solid though. Like I said, I give it 3.5. I think it's pretty solid for a non-alcoholic beer. Now it's time to do the cuvee, because you come here for the cuvee, right? I bought 4 packs of oldies. I still have cans left, so it's not like I'm ruining them, or maybe I am. So let me get it down to where that one is. So not quite there. All right, we're pretty much there. So I'm gonna pour the non-alcoholic version into the alcoholic version, then back. Because you got to do the cuvee, the AKA Covey, because it wouldn't be a Beer Patrol review if you didn't do that. Hopefully I don't spill shit everywhere, but you never know. Look, you get a second cascading effect here. That's pretty cool, actually. Hey, if you just want this to cascade again for shits and giggles, I would say just pour into another glass and you got like a second cascading. Let me get a drink here. This is gonna be a longer review, and I'm okay with it, especially when you're doing cuvées and comparison and shit. It happens. So let's get a nose. Well, look at it. It looks exactly the same because they both look the same. It's still cascading a little bit, which is cool. So get a nose. Smells more like the non-alcoholic version. A little bit of that off sweetness, but I do detect a little bit more bitterness. Yeah. Anyway, it's gonna be tough to get a nose, so let's just get a taste. Cheers. It's pretty good. So if you combine them, you're probably looking at a beer that's probably around, like 2.2, 2.3% alcohol. This might work better to mix them because I think this tastes better than the non-alcoholic version. Not as good as the regular, but close. The one thing I'm noticing is, again, that weird kind of like dark grape sweetness, definitely on the finish, but it's mixed in with like a mild bitterness and that semi-dry kind of finish. It's kind of odd, but it works to some degree, but it's kind of weird too after taking a couple sips. I would say it's slightly better than the non-alcoholic version, but not as good as the regular. So I'd give this like 3.6, something like that. It's not a bad idea. So if you have ever done this, an actual side-by-side, now I'm sure a lot of you have drank these separately, and maybe in your own mind you're thinking, oh yeah, I know what Guinness tastes like. Honestly, until you do this side-by-side, I don't think you can get a great idea. Unless like Guinness Draught is your go-to beer and you drink this every single week, if not every day. I think it's hard to remember exactly how a beer tastes if you only have it once in a great while. So I would say if you want to do this side by side, you're not going to break the bank. It's $9 a 4-pack for each of these, and it's a fun little side by side, especially if you want to try some non-alcoholic beers. But much like Heineken, it's not far off of the regular, but it's also not exactly there. So I do appreciate Adam and a couple other folks recommending this one to me, wanting to see what my take was on it. My take is that you could do much worse as far as non-alcoholic beers go. I've had a couple that have just not been that good. This is pretty solid, albeit not exactly like Guinness. So anyway, if you've had either of these beers before, post in the comments section. Let me know. Do you think they taste exactly alike? Do you think this one is completely just not even remotely in the realm of a regular Guinness? Have you done this side by side before? What were your results? And appreciate everybody stopping by for another non-alcoholic beer review. I have no other non-alcoholic beer review or non-alcoholic beers on hand, but we'll grab something in the next couple of weeks and give it a go. I think this was the 10th non-alcoholic beer review. I like doing these because I have a couple of non-alcoholic beers in my fridge that I just drink when I want something that's not alcoholic. And I think I'll drink the 3 of these I have left over and have no issues with it. So appreciate everybody stopping by for another beer review here on the Beer Patrol. To the next one. Cheers.